fraud where people put the money back in the business. They put $250,000 of their family money back in the business. So we were puzzled as to why it's fraud. Half of the draws that they have listed were paid as loan repayments to the city and to Biz Capital. So it's not the case where someone takes the money and runs, buys cars, boats, planes. Every penny went back into business.
What's her mindset today?
Stress, of course, as you might imagine. It's, she's a young lady. She was 30 years old when the loan was approved, and it was approved based on a business plan that underwriters for the city of Jacksonville, for the SBA, and for Biz Capital all approved. She never run a business in her life, but these were experienced underwriters that saw the program, said it was successful. Now they went there helping to run the business, and 2 years later, when she's struggling to get it up and running, and contractors are walking off the job, and some of the vendors that she was hoping to market to, turned down, not successful.
Curtis, if she had produced one of 56 jobs.
She's a full-grown adult. Why is 30 a threshold that it's been cited in the press release, cited here? Why is 30 years old to be responsible for this one?
I said she was 30 years old.
Yes, that's the implication. She's too young to have taken out the loan.
No, that's your implication.
Well, you keep stating it.
Well, would you let me talk?
Mr. Falgett, if she had produced one job.
Hang on one second. Let me answer the question. That's your implication, not mine. She's a young lady, no business experience, and she relies on experts in the SBA.
She's got a degree in finance.
You just don't let me take my turn? You're going to interrupt me?
No, go ahead. I mean, I want to know how a 30-year-old...
I don't know who you are, but you've asked that question. You should allow me to answer.
I'm with Florida politics, sir. Who are you?
Mr. Falgett, if she had produced one job, would you be here?
Well, she produced jobs.
Well, the record says she did not produce the 56 jobs that were promised.
That's not an accurate record. No,
Can you name one job?
She had many workers there on the job site. I'm not going to list them all now. She had a bunch of workers there. And if you have a business running for almost 2 years and you've fallen behind because of construction delays and vendor delays, and now you're having to pay a loan for 2 years without any revenue, it's a business failure. The city of Jacksonville, as you know, awards a lot of grants for people to produce jobs. There's one in the news right now where the company was 100 jobs short. And what do? They say, well, pay us back. It's a civil remedy. That's what it should have been. It's not a crime. And of course, that commitment was made back in 2011, long before the business failure struck the company in 2014.
Curtis, will she resign?
How do we take turns there?
Sorry, guys.
Will she resign from city council?
No.
Why not?
No resigning.
Oh, because she didn't commit a crime. Let me tell you something. This is a presentation we made to the U.S. Attorney's Office. It's 43 pages with 22 exhibits. We provided supplements. We've answered every question they have. And if you all will study the indictment says that the money in question was given back to Basic Products. That is the company that ran the business. That's where the money was going for them to run the business.
There's also money for personal use.
They say personal use. I just told you that she netted about $3,000 over a 5-year period, about $600 per year. And if that's a crime for her to work 5 years and make $600 a year, I've never seen it in my 40 years of practice law.
Would you agree this is rather a spectacular failure for a business to just lose $3.2 million and have nothing to show for it?
Well, you say nothing to show for it. She had a building that she helped SBA resell and made $300,000 more for SBA by selling that building than what they paid for it. So all that loss is not there, and businesses lose money. You have the Jacksonville shipyards that they loan them $36 million, and then didn't build a single thing, didn't build a park. And what happened with that? The U.S. Attorney's Office declined that case because it was a business failure, and people put money into it.
So what are you saying?
This family put $250,000 into this business.
Specifically, what construction and marketing failures occurred?
Let me hear your question.
Is this selective prosecution? Is that what you're saying?
Cases far worse, with millions of dollars more, have been declined by the U.S. Attorney's Office. This case got prosecuted when they know that every penny went back in the business. When they put in the indictment that some went personal, you asked that question, I can tell you that no more than $3,000 went to her personally over 5 years. That is not a crime.
So it wasn't improper, even if it was a small amount, it wasn't improperly put.
You're working in a business for 5 years? How much do you make a year? $600 a year she makes?
So it's different than any sort of salary.
It's working capital.
So that was her only income she was making the entire time?
No.
It seems like this was a little bit different. This was money that was paid to vendors and then was given to her account.
So apparently you don't understand what it's. They can use it for. Okay, so it could be used for equipment, for inventory, and working capital. Working capital, of course, means salary for people. as the owner and operator of the company, she made $600 a year. Who would do that?
It wasn't payroll that the indictment was talking about, was it?
The indictment doesn't say. The indictment says personal. I'm telling you, the personal is $3,000.
What did she use it for?
Bought food. What do you spend $600
Well, I'm not in
a
the
year for?
indictment.
Yeah, he's not being
my
indicted.
finances have nothing to do with this.
No, but the point is, how in the world would you think that $600 a year is somehow people that are committing fraud? They're going to take millions of dollars. Bernie Madoff takes millions of dollars. A young lady that's trying to run the business, is struggling for 5 years, and makes $600 a year for herself is anything but fraud.
So it's a small amount of money, but you're not answering whether or not it was fraudulent or not. You're just saying it's a small amount of money.
I'm sorry you didn't hear my answer.
Are you going to sever?
The answer is it's absolutely not fraud. And how in the world do you think $600 a year for someone who's putting $350,000 of their own family money into the business is fraud? Is a mystery to me.
Do you think there's some kind of political payback?
They're tied together. In federal court, typically you have to be tried together.
Will you continue to represent her?
The judge passed it for 2 weeks for that to be determined.
Yeah.
Does Katrina Brown want to settle, or does she want to go to trial?
The government offered us an opportunity to settle a year and a half ago. You know, we've tried to explain to them, this is part of our explanation, that they're mistaken. And what's ironic is their own indictment expressly says that the money they're talking about went right back into the company that was running the business and buying equipment and buying supplies and hiring people and trying to run the manufacturing business.
What were the
you understand they manufactured product there, and they sold it at Sam's, they sold it at Winn-Dixie, and they sold it at other places. This was not a total business failure, but they didn't make enough money to catch up after 2 or 3 years of delays in getting the business up and running.
Can you explain to me why there were delays? What was the delay stemming from?
Number of delays. They had to buy the building, then they had to renovate the building, and that involved all sorts of major systems, air conditioning, whatnot, electrical people. Some of them walked off the job. They had to hire the people to get back. One of the really large problems as you're running a manufacturing business, you need a source. Winn-Dixie, Sam's, people like that are going to buy substantial amounts of your product. And there was change of management at Winn-Dixie. There were other delays that led to delays in getting those contracts in place. So as I say, the entire manufacturing business was not up and running until 23 months after they made her start paying the loan back. 50% of the draws, there were like 77 draws in this case, 50% of the draws were used to pay the loan to Biz Capital, the SBA bank, or to the city of Jacksonville, 50%. You know, that money would have been nice to spend on building the operation up, and that's, of course, one of the reasons for the failure.
You say there was a plea offer a year ago, and
the government notified us a year and a half ago of their investigation and discussed the potential result in the case without an indictment. It was a time of plea, but you know, we asked them what their evidence was. They showed us the evidence. We responded with a 43-page presentation and 22 some exhibits plus some supplements, and
so now you go to trial.
This is the case that will be resolved in front of a jury.
Copy of that?
Maybe someday.
What disturbs you most about?
That Reginald Brown will not turn with the federal prosecutors on your client? I mean, are you confident that they're going to stay united as defendants?
As best I know. I mean, everyone can make their own decision, but obviously he's been involved with Mr. Sabalas as a lawyer for that same last year and a half, and you know, there've been, obviously we've conferred about what the issues are, and he had a business. If the indictment says he didn't do anything, that's not true. We've given him tons of evidence of the stuff he did, work that he did, going to the stores, putting the product out, checking the location of it, you know, doing some marketing work. And so they put in the indictment something that's not true. He did work, he did earn his money.
What's explain how that worked? So he's the vendor. She puts in an order for whatever, equipment, supplies. He provides that, but he doesn't have an inventory. It's not like his business has a warehouse that's posted up off the shelf. So how is he able to provide all this? The government saying it's just a conduit as opposed to, but how did he?
They'll call it a conduit.
Or the logistics of how he did this.
Thank you. The government will call it a conduit, but the city of Jacksonville will call it a pass-through. And they use a lot of minority pass-throughs. As you may have heard, I don't know if you record, but one of the goals of the loan was to help minority businesses in Northwest Jacksonville. He's a minority, and he's a businessman. He's a savvy, has leadership skills, you know, from the Army days. So with the construction of the local courthouse, they use pass-through minority contractors to help get them business, and that was the goal for him. He would acquire the equipment and do so under the cooperation, you know, with the co-wealth and with basic products.
Was the plea offer before or after the FBI raid in the warehouse in 2016?
Well, you may not be familiar with this, but the government normally doesn't tell you about their investigation.
Oh yeah, but we know when the FBI...
Why do you keep interrupting me?
I know.
You asked me a question, I'm going to give you a clear answer. You're the only reporter I know that doesn't let me answer a question. They do not come and talk to people about their investigation if they want to do some search warrants or raids, as you call them. So that knowledge of the investigation would not have been known until afterwards.
So so the FBI raid, then the plea offer discussion, or the other way around? Because we know when the FBI raid was.
I just told you.
You said it was a year and a half.
It's a chicken or the egg, right? The government doesn't come out and talk to people, hey, we're going to search your property and do this, that, and the other, but by the way, you want to avoid that. We don't get that option. Okay. So they talk to you afterwards.
Thank you.
So if the contract is for Katrina Brown's business to pay Reggie Brown's business to be the pass-through, to go get these products, why then does he take any of the money that he's receiving and then put it back into a basic products account? That's what I don't understand. Why is the money going back then to her if she's paying for all these goods, products?
Yeah, so what happens, this is, and you can see from the timeline that most of that, they're dealing with sort of the last 12 draws right before the business failure. And as you might imagine, the last 12 draws is with a struggling company. And as a company is struggling, and the bankers will tell you this, they have to sometimes shift their priorities. So if, for example, you decide you need, 100 boxes of 8-ounce bottles, but a day or two later you figure out it's going to be 12 ounce, you may have to move the money around with a struggling business to try to, keep it afloat. So, we've conferred with the Biz Capital executives, and they fully understand that struggling businesses may have to shift their priorities and move the funds to other ways. That's what happened with his company. But the key for them, of course, you don't commit fraud unless you're stealing money and using it for yourself. I've never seen a case in data where a fraud allegation is where every penny went back into the business that you're trying to keep from failing. And that's what happened, and money did come back to Basic Products. That's the company that was there to operate the manufacturing operation. So it didn't go back into her pocketbook, or she bought a car or house plane. It went back into the company to try to keep the company working and operating. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but when the things did collapse, the Biz Capital, the SBA correspondent bank, wanted to support them to move into a smaller manufacturing operation, sell the building, which they did for, I think, $1.2 million, something like that. Sell the building, move into a smaller operation. The city of Jacksonville would not allow that. So the ultimate cratering of the company and the business, if you will, was because the city of Jacksonville wouldn't cooperate with the SBA lender to let the manufacturing operation continue in a smaller venue.
Curtis, you're familiar with the federal prosecutor's record when it comes to so-called public corruption cases, a high percentage of conviction. Does that make you nervous?
Federal court always makes you nervous. That's all true. Every case is different, and this is a case where you've got the basic requirement for fraud is that someone is attempting to get money for their own benefit.
And you're saying that did not happen?
That did not happen at all, other than the $600 a year that you asked me about, and all due respect, that's...
So not every penny went back to it. There was a
whopping $600 a year went to herself, and she was entitled to that because she's the manager of the business. She could have paid herself thousands of dollars a year.
When she filed the paperwork to get that money, did she say it was going to be going into her bank account?
What are you talking about?
When she would request the money from the lender, was she saying, that's the whole point of the indictment, so she was saying the money is for one thing and then the money was going into her bank account. Did she say that?
Some of it went into her bank account, but what
happened?
The
money that went in, what you described as a small amount, did she say that's where the money was going to go? It seems to be the crux of why this is an indictment.
Which is exactly interesting, because the indictment says that the money did go into the business account. How is that fraud on the...
Some went for personal use, right?
You keep saying some. If you think $600 a year...
Well, it's some amount of money. What's the definition of some?
Okay.
Let's just say it's anything above zero,
I'm going to say it again. She was the operator of the business. She could have paid herself thousands of dollars. And if people are going to get indicted in federal court because they spend $600 a year trying to run a business and kill themselves and put $350,000 of their family money into it over a 5-year period.
I get what you're saying, but...
Well, I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
I don't think you understand what the question is, though.
No,
why wouldn't she say that's where the money is going when she requests the money from the lender?
She can spend it for working capital. She can spend it on salary. Okay. They don't have to know that she's got Joe Jones, who's driving a truck, and she's got to pay money to deliver supplies.
So that's going to be the argument in court, is that she didn't have to actually say the money was going to go in her bank account.
The money does go in her bank account. That's the whole point. It went into the business bank account. It wasn't spent on her personally, other than a modest amount she got over a 5-year period of time.
She hit a limit on working capital. I guess one question is, does Biz Capital know that when they were releasing these draws, that some portion of that money was not going to actually pay for the supplies, it was going into the basic products. It's coming from the bank.
Yeah,
Did they know that was?
I've talked to the vice president of Biz Capital, and he says this is standard practice when a business is failing, and if they say, I'm going to do a draw for A, but they end up having to spend it on B, that's perfectly proper. It's not a fraud of any kind, because it's a business that has shifting priorities, and they have to reallocate the funds to try to keep the business alive, which she actually bent over backwards to do. She kept the building up and running so they could make another $300,000. She would have moved the manufacturing operation to a smaller business. This lady didn't want it to be a success. She was not there to try to have a business failure.
How would you describe their relationship? Was it all business, platonic? How would you describe? Do you know?
You know, I know the business relationship, and they had none. You know, the indictment says that he was on the finance committee at the time.
That's the extent.
Well, I mean, they had no relationship at all in 2011. You know, by 2013-14, you know, she's trying to help him as a minority to become a pass-through type of vendor.
She hit a limit on the use of. There's different limits on how much working capital. She hit the limit on that.
There really weren't. They had some goals for working capital, inventory, and equipment, but they were goals only. There was no actual limits.
Curtis, how is she going to be able to perform her duties as a city councilwoman with federal indictment? I mean, it's a big shadow, it's a big cloud.
Well, it's you know, obviously stressful for her, so that's going to affect her. But I mean, she's a very effective councilwoman, and you know, will continue to represent her constituents. That's kind of apples and oranges. Obviously, she's going to lose sleep about it. We all do. You know, today's a stressful day, so you know, it's a cloud over for sure. But you know, like all of us, we got jobs to do, so you keep working, you don't stop.
Has the government told you whether person C and D in the indictment are cooperating witnesses, or they're going to testify?
What's interesting about that, no, they haven't told me that question. Okay. But my knowledge, I have some knowledge of who C and D are.
You share that with us?
No, because it's not really public record. But I do know if D is who I think it is, what they put in the indictment is completely opposite of what witness D has told the government.
Really? What is witness D? How is he described?
If you read what they say about D in the indictment, just consider a 180 opposite, and you'll have that person's version.
Okay.
Now, the government indicts it with ignoring what the witness told them, so that's a mystery to me.
So, you know, Joanne Brown and Jerome Brown both filed personal bankruptcy. There was a bankruptcy there. Is this involved with the Katrina Brown case here at all? Are those things commingled? Because they're obviously commingled on the business side.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I mean, you know, she has not filed, and they did. They were guarantors, you know, on some of the loans.
Say whether the person D is your brother, family member?
No, it's some C and D are business associates.
Either one of them in government?
No, not that I know of.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Can you say what specifically what the offer was that y'all received from the government a year and a half ago in terms of would it have been involving a guilty plea to something?
Well, they don't, you know, in federal court, they don't offer you a plea unless you plead to something. So you'd have to plead to something, you know, we expect it would have been a probation type of resolution. So when you hear, what we hear, 700 some odd years today, it's kind of shocking. So.
Is the Corrine Brown trial and the Reggie Forward trial, these guidances